Okay, we're gonna do it. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for coming.
No,
And thank you just for doing this. I'm Dana King, and I drew the first straw. Obviously you're here for the maquette, and it's almost like Dana, just zip it and show it to us, okay? But I wanted to give you a little brief background on how I got to be able to do this, how I became a sculptor. Because I didn't start out as an artist. I didn't know artists. I'd never been to a museum as a kid. I'm the daughter of a single mother. My dad died when I was 18 months old. My mom worked to feed us, keep a roof over our head, and keep us in clothes and grow us. And so the only guided tour we ever went on that I remember as a kid is to the bread factory. And I brought home a loaf of bread for my mom, and that's it. We never went to a museum. So I didn't know you could live a life as an artist, even though I knew that I was one. So when I went to college, I initially thought I would study graphic design. And then I thought, no, I like to work with my hands. I'm terrible at this. We didn't have computers when I started college. We didn't have blow dryers either, but that's a different. And I thought, I don't want to do something else's idea of what art is, because it will kill my spirit. I knew that. And so I went into business, and I graduated with a business degree, and I wanted to be in television, and I wanted to be on the sales side because I wanted to run a TV station, because that's where the decisions are made and the power's made. And so I did that. I drove to Los Angeles after living in Big Rapids, Michigan. Where's that? It's the only Big Rapids in the whole United States. And I did that for 5 years, and I worked for a man who one day called me to his office and said, I want you to be a reporter. Where? This is when he started to probably question his judgment. He said, here. I said, on TV? He said, yeah. I said, no. I'm good. I love what I do. I want your job. But he said, I'm your boss and I want you to do this. So I did it. And I was terrible at it. Couldn't remember my own name. And our agreement was, I'll give it 18 months. If you don't like me in this, or I'll give it a year. If you don't like me doing it, I can have my job back. And if I don't like doing it, I can have my job back. So 25 years later, I did figure it out. But I had an amazing career telling stories and meeting people where they were. And I've traveled the world. And I got to have the kind of career that my kids call me the disaster queen. I started at Hurricane Mitch in Honduras because I saw a picture of a little girl who was looking down into a hole cut into this endless mud, and it was her house underneath there. And I wanted to know what happened to her. Where were her parents? What was her family? And that was my first international journey. And what I found was great hope. Even when people had nothing, that they wanted to save you. And they wanted to feed you. And they wanted you to be safe when they were on the edge of just disaster, of falling off a cliff. And that journey took me to places like Rwanda, an incredibly beautiful country where people grow things, where they butchered their neighbors because of propaganda and hate. And I've been to Afghanistan. I saw women vote for the first time. Iraq, Kosovo, where they ran out Muslims, was something that, you know, would shift every 50 years. Now it's the Muslims we're gonna run, next it'll be the Christians, and it just kept going back and forth. And, but everywhere I went, hello, how are you?
Okay, so,
Good.
yes.
I've just given the preamble. You haven't missed anything. And so I told stories that lasted 2 minutes, maybe 5, if I got really lucky, and if you didn't see it, it's gone. Now I tell stories in Brown, which last forever. And it doesn't matter whether you come upon this by accident or intentionally, the learning is the same. And I create Black bodies and minds. That's my mission. I didn't know I was a sculptor. I went back to school at the end of my 25 years as a journalist when I was 48, because I wanted to learn to paint like little masters. I wanted to learn to paint like Rembrandt. Start with grisaille, black and white, and build layer after layer of color. And about halfway through, a friend invited me to go with her to Sacramento for a weekend course from a master sculptor. And I said, sure, not doing anything. And I fell in love. I fell so hard in love that by Sunday, and it only started on Friday, I drove all the way back to Sacramento. She had to drive by herself because I said, I cannot stay. I have no more room in my head. I cannot take on any information. I just have to go do this. And I've been doing it ever since. So I haven't been doing this for very long. But I know that it is mine to do. And so I do the best that I can every time. I have an opportunity to create the likeness of someone. I believe in sculpture because it takes up space. And space is color. And up until pretty much maybe the middle of the last century, Black sculpture, either by Black sculptors or the subject matter, was fairly non-existent. You could probably count, maybe not even all of our hands, how many Black sculptors there were, and how many pieces were out there. So it's representation, and representation matters. All of our stories matter. And so this is what I do to do my work. It's my service. It's my love letter to Black people. And I look at it as an educational opportunity. What you're doing here by creating a sculpture of W.E.B. Du Bois is revolutionary. You're like, what? It really is. We live in a country, depending on what state you live in, Florida, Texas, or Oklahoma, war coming. They don't want to talk about the history of African descendants. They don't want to talk about the things that have happened in this country to indigenous people, to Asian people, to Hispanic people. Sweep them under the rug. And so when you have something that can last forever, that sits in your main library, that people drive by every day, you're denying that opportunity to happen. You are creating an educational opportunity for people. And it's shocking to me that not everyone knows who W.E.B. Du Bois is. I was stunned when I told a friend who was doing the sculpture, I sent her a picture of it, and she said, "Oh, I'll look him up."
Yeah, right.
You'll look him up. This is an album. a woman who is, you know, super conscious and politically savvy. I'll look him up. Okay, please do that. So it's about education. I think it's important to share why he did what he did, who he was, what drove him, and when he did what he did. Hi.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good morning to you, sorry.
That's all right.
We started late.
Yeah.
And you're always, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the doctor's, you're gonna be late. So I want to help people to know who they are. And more than just his facade as being calendar, I want them to understand the man. My best friend, I showed her my little maquette, and she said, sit next to him. I want to learn from him. I want to feel that wisdom. I want to be with him. And the beauty of bonds is that in the summertime it's warm, right? So you can sit next to him and he will radiate heat. In the wintertime it's a little chilly. I'm sure you're not going to sit in front of the library in the wintertime. But I work by myself. I don't have any assistants. It's just me in the studio. And I create the clay piece. And hi,
Okay, we'll
maybe you come in.
Okay, cool.
It's not like you can hide. So it's just me in my studio. And then I work with fabricators who turn it into bronze. And it's amazing the quality of people who participate in creating bronze sculptures. There's so many, and they're so dedicated to the outcome. So I'm grateful for who I work with. In studying him, he's not very tall for being a boy. He was super strong, and he liked to wear his clothes that were fitted. They were tight. You could see his musculature. He was a swimmer. He took really good care of himself. But he was also very formal. It's a function of who he was, and I think a function of the time. So it wasn't that he was just a fashionable dresser. I look at him, I think that men of his era who were Black, every time they left the house, everything was together, head to toe. More than just an image thing, it was security, it was safety, because you never get another opportunity to make a first impression. And so while that's very superficial, it might have allowed him some grace to then show people who he was. And I also think that it was about security, because he wanted people to know that he was a man. And so he dressed like a man. And that's something that has been a part of our lives as Black people forever. My dad, who died at the age of 43, when he was having his heart attack, he wouldn't go to the hospital until he had on a suit and tie. Did that kill him? No. But it took precious minutes away from him getting to a hospital in the north that was segregated, if not by law, in spirit. And so he wanted to be treated as a man. as he was dying. And so that to me is the first thing I want people to see, is how clean W.E.B. was. Goatee was perfect. His hair, style of his dress from that day. And in that era, so you can see this suit, his pants are fitted. He spent money on this. Not because he could, but because he had to. I like him without his hair better than with his hair. So these are the fashions of the time. 1899 through, I'm going to make this smaller. There. And these were upper middle class and wealthy men. And he dressed as an upper middle class wealthy man. And I love that. So you're here to see my little Matt cat, and I say little, because he's only 12 inches tall. So what I did is I took some photographs to highlight, and because it'll be a little hard to see. But my computer, that would have been bad. So I'd like to thank Grigori for this. He foam printed the actual size of the bench that he intends to create to serve in front of the library. And so this is to scale. And the way that he's sitting, so he's just closed his book, taken off his glasses, and now he's thinking. He's thinking about what he's read. He's given thought, which is where he spent most of his time, in his head. And it was a lonely, lonely place. People didn't understand W.E.B. Not the soul of him. Because he was way ahead of his time. This maquette is a sketch. If you paint, you draw out your painting and sketch it out, right? As a sculptor, this is what we do as a sketch. And it basically informs the posture and the positioning. And if you can drill down any deeper into details, his mustache was life. So he is also sitting in a way that you can sit next to him, that you can come up to the bench and sit next to W.E.B. and he will have his arm around your back. Now, that's an Instagrammable moment for young people, but it's also for people like my best friend who said, I want to sit next to him. I want to absorb his wisdom. I want to be near him. I want people to have access to him. I want them to touch it. I want them, it's like that picture of Obama with the child where he bends down and the kid touches his hair and he says, you have the same hairs. And I can be the president. That moment right there crystallizes for me what sculpture is. It's more than visual. It's emotional. It's sensory. I want you to feel the warmth on him when you sit next to him. And the bench is not going to be that big. So I want people to be with him. And that's why he's positioned the way that he is. Where he's still in thought, but you could sit down and then he would turn his gaze to you. That would be the next step. he was such a formal man. Even his dear friends called him Dr. Du. So in his formality, he's erect, but yet available. And I just like, I just really like that he is available to the people of Great Barrington, people who did so much for him, who set him on his path of life, so that the rest of us could learn. So that's it.
Dana, I have a question about casting
Mhm.
a sculpture. When we spoke to all of you, I think we heard that there was a delay in that because of COVID and various other things. Have you worked, do you work with a specific foundry? Have you worked with them before? And what is your sense of, if you got this commission in August, when the piece could be delivered?
In August.
We wouldn't expect you to work in August in Florida, by the way.
No, I'm working. I have a sculpture that'll be installed. So to answer your question.
Yeah.
I worked in Oakland with a foundry in Berkeley for every piece I've ever done. And in fact, I'm shipping one back from it, which gives me
Speak a little higher.
so sorry.
Sorry, I just turned on your thing.
Oh, okay. So I've worked with a foundry for many years. I'm shipping a piece back to them. Thank you. We just have to.
You know how to work.
You're right. That's my answer to everything. It doesn't work. Smack it on your something, like the old TVs. Can you read? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, there I am. So I work with a foundry and, but when I moved to Florida, I was working on two pieces. Well, I was finishing when we started. And I found an amazing foundry. And I have sourced every aspect of the fabrication process in Florida now, and I've worked with on the pieces that I'm working with right now. One is finished and actually the foundry is finishing it. Did I touch it? I probably touched it. Touched the bottom. Okay, we have another one.
Don't break that.
How many do you have? So I'm not having a problem with supply chain issues because the foundry process takes more time. I schedule more time for the foundry process.
Okay.
It's just cool.
That one works.
I give the foundry process more time than I take to create the sculpture. So if it takes me 6 months, if I want 6 months to create it, I'm gonna give the foundry at least 7. And so once you, when, I'm just gonna yell.
Yeah.
Because I pay them when I book it and they put me on the board.
Yeah.
And foundries, because they work with the same material all the time and they have their supply chain already established. I think that the worst is over. There's still some, trucking is still expensive. Transportation is still expensive, but that's creating, so the foundry creates it and then ships it as well. But I put a sculpture up in New Haven in the middle of COVID, shipped things by rail back to California and then back again. And I'm not gonna say I had dark hair before that happened, but we're back. I think we're back. And we may be back supply chain wise, that doesn't mean that they have, that they've dropped their prices. But, so it might be a little pricier now, but, I think all in all, I'm not concerned about it because the lead time is so significant.
So if you did get this commission, when do you think the piece would be delivered?
So I have an installation in September, I have an installation, I'm gonna finish. So I'm doing a sculpture of the very first woman to play professional baseball. Her name was Tony Stone. She played for the Negro Leagues, and she's going to the San Francisco Giants want her. So she'll be installed in March. So she's gonna go to the foundry in September. So I'm good. I can start. I'm gonna give myself another month, October. And I would love as much time with him as I could have, but I would say 6 months,
6 months for your work,
this part.
yeah, and then it's probably the
then-
same.
Yeah, and for the foundry, well, actually, the foundry that I found in Florida, it's just 3 guys. 2 brothers and a cousin. They are amazing. So if I book him now, he won't even need 6 months. I won't give him 6 months, but I like to be part of the process. I like to shepherd the process. I want to be there at the foundry. We're gonna be best buds, he and I, because I need to see it through every phase of the process. So yes, I would say
So about a year.
About a year.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
That's about what I figured for an end.
yeah. And I work on one piece at a time because it's a relationship. He has to come through to me. And that doesn't happen right away. You got this mass of clay and you start detailing it and drilling down, but he won't come through for a while. But once he comes through, it's amazing. So I only work on one piece at a time because I give it my undivided attention. And I don't have, I have something else down the pipe, but it would be after he would go to the foundry that I would start on that. So I schedule it in a way that there's little to no overlap. This is not right. It's not, for me, it's not right. It's not fair. It's not nice. I know that sounds weird because it's an inanimate object, but it's not to me. My grandson helps me, picks up all the clay balls on the floor. It's a family thing. You know, they become part of my family. So if I get this commission, we're gonna be friends for a while. I just want you to know that. Because we're family.
Okay, I think that's great. Peter, do you have a question?
How big in real life do you think this is gonna be?
He was 5'7", and the space in front of the Mason Library is not that big. So I would make him a little larger than life, an inch or 2. But I, you know, people say, oh, monuments, heroic. He's heroic. And just who he is and his size is important. I don't want to mislead anyone, not with his clothing. I want it to be married to the era. I want to be true to who he is. So it might be just really an inch or 2, an inch and a half larger. Because he's relatable. When you sit down next to him, I want you to feel like you're sitting next to him. So this is 1 to 2 to 1 size. So well, based on this, so that's pretty much his size. I don't know how big this is. I didn't do the measurements, but
Yeah.
I think this is fairly accurate. This is what it is.
And our sense was that he should be a person sitting on a bench, not a monument sitting on a bench, so I think that's great. If there are any other questions, fine, otherwise we're gonna move along.
The only comment is that you have thinking is if there was a placard that went along with that, talking about the size, a little bit larger than life or something like that,
Mm,
just to give the viewer a sense that he really was a small man.
right.
Um,
Well,
if that's necessary, I'm not sure.
my first pitch was to to do something with the plaza floor, but it's gonna stay grass. But he will need a plaque. He will absolutely need a plaque, and that's kind of, it would probably depend where it goes based on historical preservation of the site and,
I figured there would be something.
yeah, yeah.
Can we have that conversation
Another day.
among ourselves?
Yeah,
Okay.
we don't need that.
So,
So what should we do with this while, the next artists are giving their,
I can
Presentation.
close it back, or I could leave it open, or I could close it back up for you to take with you.
well, I would love for all of us to be able to get a really good look at it at
Oh,
some
yeah,
point.
Okay.
While we're here
I'll
today,
just
so
leave it.
even if you wanna just put it
How about this?
somewhere in the room,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, then you just see everybody's work together. I love, listen, I would not want to be in your shoes selecting because I'm amazed by Richard. He's a wonderful human. His work is terrific. But we all have very different styles. Is there,
No, it's gonna be very.
where should I put him?
You're good.
Okay. Okay. Put him in the middle.
Because
Yeah.
they're all fabulous.
So,
We might get all three, you know.
one at the church, one at the.
Change the name of the goddamn thing.
Oh, boy. So I brought these.
You can leave them with me and I'll
Okay, thank you.
pass them out
And-
later. Thank you so much.
And if you, and my website, if you want to look at my other work. It's just Dana King Art, super creative, I know.
Bobby, you can hit that air conditioner while we're waiting for Richard to
Sure,
get up.
okay.
You know, you don't wanna,
So we cool things up, that's good.
Yeah.
great.
Dana, thank you so much.
yeah,
Thank you.
really.
I don't think you can go wrong, no matter who you see. I know it sounds like an Oscar, thing, I'm just happy. I really do. I can't even express. Like this. That you selected three. And the music is.
Yeah, well.
Good morning, all. Morning. And while you're sort of perusing through some of the material that I gave out, I'll just sort of talk casually to you and we can take it on from there. You know, I have to say, I really enjoyed Dana's presentation. She did such a great job with it. And as with her, it's a pleasure to be here. And with public monuments, I only commit myself to those projects that I feel a connection with and I can have a dedication to, because the process is so involved and so long. And money is not my main concern. Otherwise, I would go into something else besides sculpture. But I endeavor always, once I get started, to make it the best product that you can get, and that's regardless whether you're looking at France, China, the United States, or wherever. The artistic spirit, I think, is one that is just so pervasive. And, you know, I feel it in the connection with people whenever I travel, that, you know, quality, their aesthetic voice, and the energy it takes to do it is always foremost and out front. So I was drawn to the Bois project, one, because of the importance of the gentleman, and the fact that when I write these proposals up, I say that I'm interested in addressing those people of color who have not really received their due. They haven't really received their place in American history. They're seen as Black historians or social activists and so on, instead of like true Americans. It would be sacrilege to refer to George Washington as a white American. So we have to get past the color part. We have to start looking at all of those people and all of those energies that have contributed to the fabric that makes up the United States and what makes it so different, the good and the bad. Mr. Du Bois was brilliant. His impact is going to be felt, God knows for how long, unless we start with book burning and mind changing and all the rest. And I was attracted to the fact that you have this young minority kid, obviously the thoughts and ideas that were paralleling his play-yard mates. And with that comes a great deal of angst and frustration. And how do you deal with it? And he was able to go inside of himself and see a larger world. And I like to say, as with so many foreigners that come over here, that he had the vision of an outsider. He could see the country, the sociology, the culture in a way that it's hard to see once you're involved with it. Hence, when I was reading his works, and he talks about the veil, that's what it made immediately, is a distortion that begins to happen. Because you get accustomed to your own ideas and notions, and it's hard to see past that, but also Bois was able to see that it was way more complicated than that, because the veil works two ways. It distorts vision on both sides. And hence, that's how you come up with a true race problem. The real big difference was in the advantage of one in regards to the other. So I'm going to just talk to you in a very free manner as my mind just sort of travels here and there. And hopefully there'll be a strand of reason within it. But I have to say, when I was up here last, some of the things that I noticed that's very different about the Northeast. One, for instance, was a cemetery. I kept looking for the dividing line. That is between the whites, the blacks, and any other ethnic minorities that are there. And I didn't see any clear one, but obviously there is one. One of the differences as you move further and further down south, it becomes very clear. In the yard where a lot of my family were buried, no minorities were allowed to be buried. Then once the first minority is buried, I think it was an ordinance after 24 hours that they are interred, you can't dig them back up, and all of a sudden, no whites wanted to be buried there. And I find it just a powerful psychic energy that comes from where with this whole notion of race, not only race, but culture. And Mr. Du Bois was steeped in that. And I think as all minority kids are. And I would say, but it's not just minority kids. I would say the same thing also happens with women. Where they feel a social pressure. They see a social pressure. They talk about it, it's denied. But that doesn't mean it's not fair. And I think what's even more magnified when it came to economics and to culture. Mr. Du Bois saw and felt this, and this is what shaped him and how he looked at the world forever. He had a truly great mind. He was an intellectual giant. Became a world leader in activists. And I wanted to present at least those aspects of him in my presentation. Now there are constraints. You have a bench. We're all working with the same dimensions. It has to be seated. I love the notion of working with posture, positions, composition as a key component of expression. Because we're not going to invent new body positions or anything else, but it's how we use our body. And part of that also is got to do with custom. Once again, culture and certainly times in terms of social conditions. So I tried to put myself in that situation and decide how I wanted to approach and render Mr. Du Bois. And I decided that, first of all, he had to be a gentleman. Second of all, his brilliance had to be projected. He wasn't an athlete. He was an activist, but he wasn't out throwing rocks or anything else. What he was doing was he was hurling notions, concepts, and ideas. So I decided what I would do is to, of course, have him move across legs. I say, of course, because on some very wrong preliminary sketches, I had his legs open and it just didn't have the right feeling, especially for Mr. Du Bois. And I wanted him to snuggle up against that bench and sort of sit right on it. Hence, his left arm slightly over the side of the bench. And in doing research, I saw that in fact he was left-handed, so it was only appropriate that this is the hand that should hold his stylus. Since this is the very center of the city of Great Barrington, in front of the library, I thought he needs to have some sort of gesture that is a sort of a beckoning and welcoming gesture to passerbys and to fellow citizens. And that's where I have his hand sort of reaching out and sitting out forward. But he's sitting here, and I was listening to Dana, we're all sort of on the same track with that. This man was deep in thought always. And I remember as a kid, when I went from room to room, the thing that went with me is that Dick is a daydreamer, don't put him near a window. Well, that doesn't matter, because a corner or anything else works just as well to help you get into that mode. And I know Mr. Du Bois was constantly thinking, projecting himself, seeing himself in other people, and I'm also sure he was feeling very much an outcast. But here I have him as a citizen of Great Barrington, welcoming fellow citizens of Great Barrington. With the realization that whatever the circumstances were here that helped or hindered, this was home, and this was where he started, and this is where he got his foundation to go out in the world. I decided there should be some symbols that also talk about his accomplishments because he's so prolific a writer. So I have some of his books, which are just, again, symbolic of novels that he's written. And I decided to throw also his cane in as well, which was almost part of the time. And someone had said to me, well, I didn't realize that he was handicapped. Well, almost part of the dress at the time was to have a walking stick or a cane, and that was not so much to help you walk as it was to defend your very being. You know, whether it's dogs on the street or as soon as you get off the main street in the alleyways and so on, there's no telling, you know, what you're going to encounter. So it was fairly typical and traditional, you know, and appropriate in the times. I decided because of the bench, because of the span of the bench and the color of it is going to be pretty prominent in front of the library, that I needed to, I can't broaden the figure, but I needed to tie that figure in a more lyrical way to the bench he's sitting on. So I drove straight an overcoat over his shoulders, hanging casually on one side, somewhat draped on the other. And this was also a little bit of the style of intellectuals at that time. They hung together. It's not that they were trying to differentiate themselves, but you began to go habits and styles and all the rest. And just to have even an overcoat over your shoulders with your arms not necessarily fluid was, again, something. And this man was while he was a very great citizen of Great Barrington, he was a great citizen of the world. And he probably one of the few at this time that could really put things together where his humanity came out and was the prescription that he used to youth the rest of the world. Sounded very crazy at the time, and to some still today, but some of his theses on race relations and so on were very apropos even to this day. You know, so again, Mr. Du Bois, you know, sitting, dressed with the times, extending and walking his right hand, you know, to his fellow citizens and his left hand. Stopped in the middle of thought as he's sort of writing down those so I was looking at Gregory would be here today because I had also some suggestions and all that. And one is the bench. I got the bench a little later than I had started with the kit. And rather than just totally realigning the kit, I decided to continue with it. And well, you know, as I move on to the next stage, then of course, you know, that will be incorporated. So the slight bend is not there. But what I realized immediately is that some sort of lip or plinth should be on the bottom, because his foot is going to rest down, and if it's resting in grass, and you know, a lot of responsibility on grounds people. And I can tell you, I'm just trying to maintain my own grounds that I don't care how careful you are with the weed whack or anything else. His shoes are going to get polished quite often and actually polished. So the damage. So I think some sort of distinction between the grass and the bench, you know, should happen.
I'll convey that. Thank you very much. That's a good. Good enough.
And I also had some possible suggestions. And one is, I have 6 boxes. I knew I couldn't carry them all. So I made a decision, but in one, I had an example of a cylinder plinth. And one of the suggestions was, there could be one to a half a dozen of these circular plinths, stone plinths, put on the campus outside of the library with inscriptions that were pertinent to Mr. Du Bois, which would be additional seating places in a much more informal kind of way, and also reiterate this whole thing without turning it into a billboard commercial. I do agree there should be some sort of kiosk that's someplace so that people with their iPhones and all the rest can just key into it and get a running history of who Mr. Du Bois was, why is he important, about the great city, the great Barrington. I could start using others that are great. Yeah, but where information is readily available, particularly to the younger generation who love their gadgets. The other suggestion that I had, and I think it was sort of just put in the proposal, was maybe some of the back of the bench could be used almost as a blackboard. I don't mean in a negative sense with Crayolas and so on, but where excerpts from some of his poetry could just in cursive run across the bench and be cut into it. In which case, if that was something that was decided on, I would provide, all the graphics for that and the templates go to the party or wherever it would be.
I just want to point out, Richard, this, I think, is the sketch in the book that has these plinths that you recommended. Also, here, it has the base that you're recommending.
Yes.
So,
That he has here. And they're, again, that's parts of the working process that is there, so it's not necessarily finished, and I was apprehensive about even including it. But I thought, no, anybody, you guys should be privy to the working process. And as part of that, what I did is I put in a quite lengthy procedure of what the monument goes through. This so that you can understand on our part, which you have to be cognizant of too, because wherever is said, this is a process that it's got to go through from one point to the other. And you've taken the first step already, which is the maquette. Maquette historically was known as a cartoon, and that was before we had comic cartoons, but it was meant to be only a gesture, not a finish, but where it starts talking about the spirit where you want to go. And then on the next one, which is this size, then you start seriously addressing the very look of the monument, because that will be 1/4 of what the final one will be.
Richard, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked before, and that is, do you have a foundry that you work with? What is your schedule, et cetera, et cetera?
I'm gonna strip it from you guys.
Hey, we turn the air conditioner on.
Yes, I do. I've used a number of different foundries. I tend not to jump around. Would say, look at a foundry the way we do a restaurant. You can get all kind of ratings on a restaurant, but if the chef who earned those ratings is not there, those stars don't mean a darn thing. So it's important to me at the foundry that I work with that they're able to keep a constant staff. And I know the people, the wax room and the patina room and so on, because I know to what extent I have trust and I've had some not so great experiences with the wax room. And again, out of, for very good reasons. I mean, usually there's an apprenticeship system that starts, they might start in the wax room and then start working their way up. And, oftentimes, I find that my work can get inadvertently edited. And I'll go in and look at the wax and I go, where's the mold? And you just take a piece of clay, push it into the mold, right, and look at it again, and compare it up against the wax. I go, no, this is not behavior. And they'll say, well, we were trying to enhance it, we thought what you wanted. I go, no, I gave you what I wanted, and while I try to have a piece look very realistic and literal, that's not my approach. My approach as a sculptor is to deal with form and texture, and to be aware of how light strikes that, and how the metal begins to bend it around, and an artistic expression. So again, if I don't have cuticles and fingernails, I don't want cuticles. So the foundry that I work with, they understand that, they respect that, and they take pride in that. So with the, I guess that was one, with the Douglas Monument,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, they, they would call me up and ask me to bring in bring in a couple of my tools. So as pieces are getting pulled, that is, as waxes are getting made and pulled out of the mold, there's always a little distortion, a little bit of clarity that's lost, and so on. And they like to have the right tools that mimic the passage over that area. And I was telling them, well, everything is a tool when I work. I'm looking around to see what is available, what can I use. And with Douglas's hair, for instance, I had my repertoire of cinder block chips. And I like to kind of use those and pepper his hair with that, because it's not the individual strands that I'm interested in, but it's the pronounced lights and darks that you read from a distance, because sculpture is light and dark. As Rodin said, it's the whole and the light. But hopefully you get a lot more skill, you push it a little bit further to that. But to answer that question, it's a very, very long answer. I'd like to know the people in each stage of the process. So I have enough to worry about, and I worry anyway, but I would like to feel just a little bit more comfortable. And the foundry that I use is Independent Casting, and it's in Philadelphia off of 95 in the commercial area. And I like who the owner is. I identify who he is, and I like the people that he has working with me. And my kudos to face is I don't work with people that I can't identify with. Like too short. I need to have a feeling of who they are, where they're coming from, and enjoy the experience. So yes.
So what was the question about the time?
Timing too.
Oh, okay,
About
yes.
how long ultimately between your work and.
Well, I can
master's
certainly
work?
stretch it out as long as you'd like it to go. That's never the base of the question. It's usually, how quick can you have it out? And I have a timetable, I think, that I suggested to be part of the working process there. And that is the bare bones timeline, but it's almost like a question of how long you take to do a painting. Well, it depends on what you're looking for. There are times when you're trying to be, or being immediate, spontaneous is more important than anything else. Or there are times where you just need to rework, or as some of my old teachers would say, it's not done until it's framed and out of it. But you're always free.
I think our concern is we don't want to dedicate a monument in the snow.
Oh, Oh,
Yeah, I don't think it's as much about we want something now. We
No.
just need to have a sense
no.
Yeah,
for all the things that we're doing to.
yeah. When I'm raising money, I'd like to be able to say, well, we're gonna dedicate it and blah, 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 or it's coming. So that's my sense is
I
a
get
year.
it, yes, and it's a very valid question. I'll add to that. This is the greatest time to raise money. And when the process is moving even further on, it gets even easier. Because this takes imagination
Yeah.
and people can do
Oh, thank you.
what they will with it in their head. Once it begins to start having a presence, quarter
Yeah, got it.
size, it starts becoming very
Yeah.
specific. And when it's documented by many photographs in the actual size that it is, and someone is standing next to it or whatever, then the reality of it and the presence of it begins to set in. I figure the bare bones, I could have the project done in a year. I am not comfortable with that usually, because there's no wiggle room. That's in the perfect world. And I've been very fortunate in my life, but I've damn sure not been in a perfect world. As they say, shite happens, so. For the last project, it was COVID hit no sooner than I made my presentation, the selection was made, and it affected everything. I say everything to the point where even the look of the monument changed because the stone that he was supposed to sit on was no longer available. And when I say available, within the time frame that we needed and within the budget that was available. And so he ended up sitting on coiling wheels.
Oh, great.
And I think, and again, it's one of those situations where it worked out absolutely for the best. It was an initial thought that I had with him because I wanted to make it absolutely a seaport monument. And on the wharves of that time, there's boats all around waiting for the whaling vessels to come in and so on. But I thought it was too illustrative that I try to stay away from that. I'm not interested in building or as some say, but they're telling a very specific story. I want to excite your imagination and talk about the character, and I want to do honor to the person that I'm spelling. If he's done enough with his life, I want to honor him.
Because you said his books or just books? Because are the books going to be inscribed and have particular titles on them?
Well, it could be, but I tend to stay away from that. And again, I don't like getting too little, but I think that is the case where, some sort of kiosk, I think it's called a kiosk, that is.
We'll have a QR code.
Yeah.
We'll
Very,
have a
very
QR
kind.
code and
Yes.
a plaque. So
Yes.
I think that's
So
easy enough.
you can address that almost specifically, and even with passages if you wish. And so I think these would remain just generally symbolic of who he was and what he did in his passage through life. And the other thing I would say is that while I'm very critical of myself, in comparison, I'm very good at portraiture. But my sense of portraiture is not just a life cast of the face. It's like what I think any good artist is that you want to go deeper than that, and you want to try to get into the character and the soul of the person that you're doing. And of course, that's. I should say, well, what is that? How do you do that? Gee, if I had a 1, 2, 3 to that, I would be. I fumbled my way through, watch subtle expressions, change them all the time. And in the end stage, I had large dark studios, large dark mirrors lighting my studio. And that's how I make a lot of my decisions. So as I'm working, I can look and see that same image reversed. And believe me, it reminds me of that old thing of someone was asking who's the most beautiful woman in the mirror.
Yeah, Snow White.
And yes, and the mirror would not lie. The mirror does not lie. The mirror is like taking a journey into the house when you're feeling so full of yourself because you had such a great morning, and then as soon as you come back out, it's like, who the hell touched my piece? You know, it's distance brings on objectivity, and I need those mirrors so I can constantly have feedback that's not complimentary, but literally it's turning that around, and I can see from various views how I'm beginning to approach it. And the dark part of the mirror is that it knocks out detail. Most students in the beginning, and I would say most pedestrians are enticed by detail. I think detail is the very last thing, and it's the salt and the spirit of the piece, and detail is something that is used only just to punctuate it. And if you start reading that first, something's wrong. So the dark obscures the detail, and the mirror itself, the reverse is helps with, again, keeping in mind. Yes.
Can I ask you about the patina on this?
Yes.
And also what it's made of?
Yes, the patina on this is paint. Paint to, you know, they always say a faux finish. You know, it's a paint to resemble a metallic finish. We have a lot of options, and I think I addressed that in part, you know, in the handout sheet, because bronze goes from the golden color that it comes out to an absolute pitch black that you can send it. And it all happens with acids. So it's a matter of heat. Heat is the accelerator, and then acids that you choose react chemically with the bronze and produce the patina. Simplified version of that is every time you go in and out of the door and touch that doorknob, it's a uric acid from the perspiration on your hands, however slight, that starts reacting to the brass on the doorknob. And then to complicate it a little bit more, it's a region of the country that you live in, and here, you know, northeast, close to the ocean and so on, you will tend to have a little bit more greens come out. You know, it's something. Yes, sir.
Is that bronze?
I'm
The
sorry.
sculpture is bronze.
Yes, the sculpture will be.
So why would you not patinate, that's the right word,
Yes,
aside from painting? Painting means
No, he just meant.
you
the
do it
line.
again sometime.
I think it's just the maquette was painted to look like bronze.
Oh,
oh,
all right.
oh, no,
Right, the
I'm sorry.
no,
Okay,
no,
I thought you were saying you were gonna paint
no,
the sculpture itself.
no,
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 sorry.
no, it will be the finished piece will be a silicone bronze. And silicone is a more recent conglomeration of metals that go into it, which make it a little bit harder. And so, and a little bit more resistant to the elements of the climate. But this will be a silicone bronze. I'd say the average thickness will probably be around 3/16 of an inch. There are passages inside for engineering reasons that'll be a little thicker. But the 3/16 of an inch is more than sufficient for you to crash a truck into it. And what you're gonna be doing is recoloring it while the truck is getting sent to the junkyard.
Yeah.
I mean, this is substantial. There is no such thing as solid bronze unless you're talking about a very, very small piece. Because the process of heating the metal and then pouring the metal, of course, as it cools, it shrinks. And when it shrinks, that's the opportunity for distortion. And the more hot metal you have, the greater the shrinkage. And not only would it shrink, it doesn't necessarily shrink proportionally, it could distort and twist it and do other kinds of things. So the areas that are a little bit thicker will only be because of the foundry, as they're holding the waxes up and looking at them in light and so on. They're envisioning the passage of the metal as it's going down, and they decided maybe an edge is a little too sharp, it's gonna encourage washout when the hot metal starts going through there. It just want to wash away a section, so maybe they want to just guide it just a little slow. So that metal will be heated to approximately 2,200 degrees, which is basically like a lava. The old guys, they didn't have thermometers that they could get it in and get the temperature. They were chefs. They would look at it, like grab on, smell it, watch it. They would see the flames dancing off of the molten bronze, a certain color, and then determine that it's about the right temperature for. So 2,200 high, about as high as it's taken. They don't pour any lower than 1,700 because as it's cooling, it's slowing up. And what you want, you don't want that metal to stop running at any point. You want it to get to all those fine points, particularly the surface, so that it's just catching all the detail it can. And to me, the detail is not necessarily the lines in his face or the individual hairs, but it's the act of making the piece. Yeah, I like texture. You know, I like the action of the application of the clay and watching it. And in the end, it wasn't until I could afford to cast my first cast, which was in my 30s, that I could really understand what I should be doing when I'm sculpting, because metal is different than plastic. It bends like it does things. It's a little bit more dramatic. And I started understanding a little bit more what I was doing. So you'll find very few high polished, smooth areas. Well, a couple times like around here, I might do different figure. But no, I'm interested in grabbing your eye and having it travel around. And I want you to see the greatness of the man, but after that, I want it to become a visual journey. Go forward.
Thank you.
I tend to wander on, so I'm sorry, but that's what.
Wonderful.
The other question.
Question?
Yeah, so along those lines, after somebody's encountered this sculpture and maybe sat with it for a little bit, and what do you hope that they walk away with? Like what are they thinking, but also what do you hope they feel?
Well, you know, I've almost moved away from that because I kind of realized that once I put a piece up, it is totally free to me, and people bring their own experiences to me. With the Douglas that I put up, I used the rope in one occasion across his chest. Some saw it as a lynching rope, others saw it as the white man's bull whip, and so on. And I'm trying to explain it. No, it's a general symbol of bondage, and it's broken. You know, but I just got comfortable with the idea is that, you know, people will add to it and take away what they want. But I want to make sure that one, in his face, they see a thinker. In his gestures, they feel a welcoming. And I don't much care what they think about his ideas, because that's the notion of freedom. And we're never going to get totally on base with that. I just want them to know he was a world class and also your citizen. Sorry, I'm sure I slurred over a lot of things, didn't answer the question directly. And
No,
I'm not
I'm
running at all,
thrilled.
yeah.
so-
Learned a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And- Yes, ma'am.
I'm not quite sure about how you would envision this and how people would respond to it. But I'm just wondering, are these sculptures meant for people to sit next to or for children to climb onto? Or are they hands off?
No,
The whole idea of having them on a bench is so that people will sit.
So they're approachable, but
That was the one constraint that we gave the sculptors is we want them on a bench.
Okay.
So that people can.
but then again, with guidance from their parents.
So being a pediatrician, I have concerns about the
It's
pain
pain, yes.
because children, they fall and that cane would not do good for any kid that falls on it.
I don't think it would impale them, but as I was moving it around back and forth, I was taking some of that into consideration. And I know this day and age, to say that, parents should, there is such a thing as no is kind of a real debatable issue. But, at one point this morning, I either had to lay it on the side, which would have been less of an issue because I could hold it up and say, and this is a cane that at some point will decide where it'll go. But I decided I need to glue it in place. It'll be whatever it is. But
Yeah.
actually, for the entire time I worked it, it was over on this side. But either way, it does make a passage of, possible, entanglement.
Right,
I also would have offered as an option a few more cast books that could go onto the other side, because my concern was that you have this long row of benches, and one side is where the attention is being drawn, and the other side is kind of open, and there should be some kind of maybe equity or balance. So, maybe the cursive writing, maybe a few scattered bronze books around there, and so on. But I know the current thing is, and I'm surprised that wasn't included, so that's great. Is there divisions almost every 4.5 feet, and the division is so homeless don't sleep on it. And I go.
Oh, no.
No, it's because the marble will be in pieces and it just needs to.
Oh, no, I'm not accusing you of that. I'm saying most municipalities.
Oh.
Yeah, I realize the sections are gonna be pieced together, but I also realize that if I were homeless too, that would be
well,
you
it
probably
happened.
don't have that much of a problem.
Just another mention is that cane is meant to be proportionate to a real cane, or is that just a demonstration?
Well, all this is just a demonstration.
I think.
Yeah, I would have to tune things like I'm not, I played around with the length of this
Yeah.
forelegs. And part of that is, in sculpture, it's different from medical studies. I mean, although we're very knowledgeable of anatomy, but it has to do with visuals and perception. So anything that's up high is distorted because of the way when you look up things that, if they're the right size, they appear diminished back and so on. And here I was making his forelegs a little bit longer, so if you're approaching him, it didn't seem like he was stumping down. But again, those final decisions will be things that I'll go back and forth over numerous times. And also the committee will have, a voice, which I'm
Right,
sure.
I think these are models, so they're not finished products, and there will be discussion about all of this, whether it's gesture or head or books or cane. So this is, that's a very good point for you to bring up, and we'll certainly take it into consideration, but what you see there is not necessarily the finished
Yes.
design. That makes-
I understand.
Yeah.
I'm just pointing out that the cane is not usable in the length that it is. Because if it's meant to be a symbol, that's fine, but otherwise, it is just at the height that if a kid were to fall on it, it would hit it right in the head. So that is a liability that the committee needs to take into consideration.
All right, good.
Thank you.
Huh?
Yes. So.
Okay, we're
Thank you,
ready.
Richard.
Thank you, Richard.
That's the month, whatever it is, because I think the most important thing is.
Should we keep the whole gestalt of that, the model and the container? I think that would be great.
Yeah, I was gonna leave that with you. I
That would be great.
yeah, I didn't think of that until last, whether or not I was taking this out today with me, or.
Yeah.
If you're gonna have to ship this back or whatever,
Right.
but I'll just leave this here and, it's best if the styrofoam is emptied out, you sit down, then
Yeah,
stuff on
right.
top, because it messes around, but I think right now, the lid will go down on his head.
Okay,
So,
Richard, great. I just wanted to tell you our plan is it will, we are having a fundraiser on the 19th. And the three models will be displayed initially, and then they will go to the library and be on display for a week. And we're actually sending them also to the Berkshire Athenaeum, because we feel the entire community needs to take a look at them, and then we'll make a decision.
I think that's a great idea, just please don't break off in the arm or anything. or whatever,
Yeah,
so that
yeah.
will Display.
Okay.
But, I don't know if I really gave you a final answer. If a year is what the contract says, a year is when it will be done. But, again, you know, I love the ability to kind of come out 2 weeks later, after not having worked on it, uncover him and seeing him as if it's for the first time, rather than having that experience when he's in bronze.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Anyway. best
Thank
luck.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Okay, so good morning. Hi, I'm Vinnie Bagwell. All right, so. I was doing I've had 5 of these contests to do in the last 5 months. It's really nuts. And so I had to write this narrative for the New York Public Library because I'm a finalist for doing the baby lions that are going out for the next annex, which is really cool. And so I had to really stop and think about how I became a storyteller. That's pretty much what I do. And early in my career, I started sculpting in 1993, so it'll be 30 years this year. I realized that storytelling via public art is one of the most powerful ways to preserve history and educate the masses. When I first started sculpting, we didn't have internet. I was trying to figure out, like, how do you even do this? I mean, sculpting was a surprise for me. I started sculpting at 36. I'm an untutored artist, started off drawing very well. In high school, occurred to me one day, I can draw, I bet I can paint, and hi, I bet I can paint. So I am what is known as an intuitive. And so, not so fast. And so, the interesting thing about public art is that it freshly reveals and acknowledges the humanities of the victims of racism. We are still going through the adventures of fighting racism, and of course, particularly since 2020, with the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, the whole country is now reevaluating its portfolio for public art, and just about everybody's short. So there's now this tremendous desire and movement to create public art that represents the color. And so again, it helps to broaden our understanding of Black injuries and generational suffering. And so my style is anchored in realism. My daughter, who went to art school, says naturalism. And it's defined by candid portraiture. If I were a photographer, I'd be the kind of photographer that says, I don't do grip and grins. Okay, I like to do people kind of looking real, looking like themselves, kind of in motion, in action, that sort of thing. I started doing bas-relief because I really had this tremendous desire to make art, and I found out how expensive casting is. And so at the beginning of my career, I decided that I was going to cast my 3-dimensionals in bronze only, and that I was going to use resin for bas-relief. So coincidentally, this is the bas-relief for the piano lesson that was done on Broadway in 2012. And the idea is to create visual intrigue to drive a story. It's not enough to just create a pretty sculpture. You want to tell your story, and sometimes just you sitting there like that doesn't say anything. So the beauty of adding bas-relief to the surfaces is that I can expand my storytelling. And really the details matter. This is the paper in Frederick Douglass's hand. You can read it. Until the American people stop using color as the bar and measure of respectability, this discussion must go on. And the rest of the text is in the pavement on that sculpture. And some of the subjects have souls, and they speak to the viewer. I know, because now that we have social media, people tell me all the time when I make posts, and it's amazing the things that people say to me, because what I'm realizing that in the process of doing what I do, I've become a steward of this nation's memory. And to date, the memory is a little dim, so it needs a little illuminating. So this is the joy of being a public artist at this time. They are meant to be engaged. This is my Ella Fitzgerald, which was my first public artwork. That is Clayton LaBeouf. He played in The Wire. His daughters live around the corner from me. That's sculptured across the street from my house, coincidentally. And they sent me this picture, and I think it's a really great shot. So my goal is to design truly memorable destinations. This is Isaki at the Rain Garden on the Hudson River. And the idea is to combine inspiration, innovation, working on an African burial ground for Montgomery, New York. There are 86 enslaved Africans buried in the woods. That looks pretty open, but it's actually the woods. And so they wanted me to create something that people could kind of engage the space. But coming from New York and knowing New York State, I knew that preservation was going to be a big deal. So I knew that they were not going to want us to walk on them. So this was a solution that I came up. You can walk all through the woods around them, but not on them. We also had GPR survey done, which again, technology, which is an amazing thing now. That's how we found out how many there are and that they are and how they are. They're only about 18 inches from the surface. So again, you take your traditional ideas and you try to figure out how to make them work with real world. And so we're changing the perception of place. This is Victory for Fifth Avenue at 103. And in dramatic, exciting ways. So here we are, William Edward Bernard Du Bois, The Crises is the name of my piece. And so in the early 20th century, millions of African Americans migrated from the rural South to the urban North to seek economic development. They called it the Great Migration. And of course, the first sign, it was a renaissance of sorts, was when, Frederick Douglass was one of the first people to tell his story in his own words. And so it was interesting because, nobody had really heard Black people talk from their perspective. And so, again, at the turn of the century, you're now learning about what it means to be Black from a Black point of view. So, the Harlem Renaissance artists expressed their personal realities. They focused on themes such as the influence of slavery on their experience, identity, community, and the everyday experience of being Black, because it is different being Black. All right, so what's interesting about the Harlem Renaissance is that it sets the stage for the civil rights movement and the Black arts movement of the 1950s and 70s. What was interesting about this is I didn't even know there was a Black arts movement. I never heard of it referred to as that. So that was interesting for me to learn. And so, by the way, this is all my artwork. Both of those movements celebrated the rich culture and the beauty of Black people. And of course, it was in all mediums. And again, these two movements were focused on political power for Black people in the fight to, achieve equality. We're still fighting this fight, which is why the sculpture is so important. So the Crises became an important venue for the writers who were Black and involved in the Renaissance, because it was a vehicle for them to be able to publish, because they're Black, they're not allowed to publish in other publications. So the Crises was pivotal in launching the careers of a bunch of people who we now know as icons for the Harlem Renaissance. So W.E.B. Du Bois created a revolution, literally, in the literary arts, because he enabled all of these people to be heard, visible. He gave them a voice. And so you've got, of course, Langston Hughes, Jesse Redmond Fawcett was the editor for many years. James Weldon Johnson, who we all know with every voice and sing, Alan Locke, County Collins from Yonkers, Claude McKay, Zora Neale Hurston, Anna Bontemps. Then you've got, of course, Walter White. I didn't even know Walter White was Black. I thought he was white. Again, as I'm researching each of them, I'm learning more and more about each of these people, which I thought was interesting. And so Arthur Huff, who is, his brother. And again, these people were able to be published for the first time and often in the Crises, which is frankly, a big deal. So this is my seated W.E.B. Du Bois. In the process of doing him, there's a lot of things that I like. I mean, faces are important, but I like details. Like I love men's shoes. I worked for Nordstrom's men's sportswear for many years. I love men's clothing. I love draping. I love shoes. And a lot of times these things are reflected in my artwork. Like it's like, oh, you gotta have cuffs. There's gotta be a break. The bow tie looks like it's hand tied because I don't like the fake bow ties. And so all these things are important in terms of the body itself. I discovered that he's a short man, he's a tiny man. And so, one of the concerns is that the bench is low. It's only 15 inches high. I don't know how old you are, but I'm going to tell you, when you're older and you sit on a low chair, like a toilet or something like that, you're like, whoa. So the beauty is that because he was small, I really want to make him life size. Because originally I was thinking if he were standing, I would make him larger than life, particularly because he's outside. But because he's sitting on the bench and people will be able to engage him up close, I'm going to stick with 5'6". That was a major decision. On the back, I have a bas relief of all of the faces of the 15 people that I just mentioned. And again, this is the spark inquiry, the fact that he's sitting outside the library. It might be nice if you had signage or a key or something like that outside where they could see it, be like, okay, let me go to library look for that. I think it will spark inquiry for these 15, as well as the Harlem Renaissance, as well as the Civil Rights. I mean, it covers a variety of things that I think will spark inquiry. That's the whole purpose of the library. At the bottom is my traditional Braille, and it says the crises, a record of the darker races, because that's what W.E. Du Bois meant when he first created this paper. All right, so what I really appreciate about scanning is that it allowed me to do the detail on the paper, I mean, to the T. And so the idea is that this is the first of many. They're still producing the crises. Of course, it chronicled the journey of Black America, and it is amazing how many people reference it at the Library of Congress. So, over 5 million pieces. That's a lot. I was like, wow. So, oh, wait, go back. On the back, it says what to read. That will be legible. Again, if you have a key, it would be nice if you had some of the references on the back of there in the library in case people actually want to read some of this stuff. Because frankly, I want to read some of it now because as I start to really read the list, like, this is good. So that is what's going on the back. And again, all of this is to, again, the sculpture itself snatches the eye, but this is to make them look all over, to really think about it, to really think about him. Since you're at the library, you might as well check it out, or better yet, pull your phone out and Google or whatever. It makes it interactive. And so these are my specifications. Again, this is W.E.B. Du Bois here. And again, he is a relatively small man. So the sculpture will be 5'6". Again, seated on a 15-inch high marble bench, bronze. Black patina is pretty much what I do. And we're probably talking about summer 24 or fall. At this particular juncture, there are a lot of extraneous variables. Number one, as I said, I'm going to try scanning for the first time with this. They will output an armature, and then I will then refine the armature, and then ultimately go from there the way I normally do, which is molding, casting, whatever. And I think a year is sufficient. Thank you. Let's see. Hold on one second. What was that there?
Vinnie, did you use this technology to make this model?
Yes, this is what I'm saying is that we made a maquette, then went in and perfected. So for instance, again, it's like, oh, can we tighten up those fingers? Can we? So I am thrilled by it. Luckily, I didn't even look for these people. They came to me coincidentally at the time that I was making this maquette. At which point we began to have this conversation. They want me to do something for the Schomburg. And I'm like, no, I want to do something for me. And so we started having this discussion. And so I said, the thing of it is that I don't know anything about this. I'm gonna need patient people, hand holding, and pardon my French, you can't F this up because a lot of money for these people. So, luckily, I'm working with some really good people. The kind of scanning that I wanted to do. Oh, excuse me. All right, yeah. So the interesting thing about, again, this is one of our early printouts. You see how it's doing the weird thing right there? No, that's not what I mean. So again, this is the medium for the resin. Let's see, again, this was just a rock. We were anxious to see, we need this on the phone. So again, imagine a big one with all this, it's like, I'm not sure. It's amazing. It's amazing. I can't wait to see the big one. Stay tuned. I was very disappointed. They were very happy that I didn't yell and scream and carry on, because normally I'd be like, what? But at any rate, you know, again, things happen.
Can you talk about because it seems like you're gonna be really precise and detailed with even words on piece of paper, like,
Yeah.
how does that work on bronze on a large scale like that over time? Is it just, it's just different?
Okay, so black turns this beautiful blue color. So for instance, I'll use Frederick Douglass as an example. Frederick Douglass was done in 2008. Usually what we do is we seriously coat it with wax, because even though we don't mind it oxidizing, we don't want it to hurry up and oxidize. Also, too, the purpose of the waxing is to prevent vandalism and things like that. And so nothing happens, pretty much. If anything does happen, like for instance, here, I'll go back and show you for a second.
Like the oxidizing won't affect the lettering or anything?
If anything, it'll be more legible, because usually what happens is oxidizing happens at the kind of the creases, so it'll probably make it pop more. So I don't see it being a problem. For the most part, the maintenance on these, and I got a maintenance program for you too in your proposal. The maintenance on these are, well, this is Joy Bronze. Basically, it's just simple water. I'm talking about Ivy simple water. You're not using any chemicals. Basically, it's a brush. You start off with a brush and hot water. You know, bird debris, stuff like that. If you get some kind of, I don't know, vandalism, like for instance, somebody decides to use something and put swastikas on Ella Fitzgerald's boobs and her crotch. Who does that? Like I said, it's across the street from my house. I was trying to check the bus schedule, and I turned around and I'm like, and it was an opportunity for me to see whether or not that my maintenance program works. I'm here to tell you, it does. But I had to be real patient as I was cursing in the phone to my cousin, going like this with my thumbnail. Okay, I was able to peel it off very nicely, scrubbed it off, and then I called my contacts at the New York Times and all the newspapers said, I want you to call the mayor's office in the morning and ask them when they're going to restore this, because they didn't take care of Ella at all. She was left untouched for 26 years, which I didn't care. I mean, you know, the thing, I'll hug and kiss them when I leave them. It's yours, you take care of it. Literally, she's across the street. I'm at the Yonkers Metro North train station. She's in the plaza across the street. I see her all the time. The interesting thing about her before, because they just did her last year, before they restored her, I could tell that somebody was buffing her boobs. Boobs were real shiny. Could tell that more right-handed people were touching her than left-handed, because her right shoulder was golding. Her hands were gold, and her hands were totally gold. And again, it's public art. You want people to touch it. You want them to make selfies. You don't want them to hurt themselves, but you want them to engage the work. So as far as I'm concerned, black is a good color. And again, I like the way it evolves with time and weather. And maintenance is black kiwi shoe polish.
Business is what?
Maintenance,
Shoe polish?
black kiwi shoe polish. If you've ever polished a shoe with black kiwi, buff off, that's it, once or twice a year. My recommendations, if you do it, well, it gets colder here sooner, I'm gonna say October and maybe April.
And
Somebody's job. And if you don't do it, it won't kill it. It's just that the more you wax it, the better it stays.
the swastika, was that spray painted?
Something akin to a crayon, it was some kind of wax based something. or other. But
And
again, this is
if
the
there
beauty.
were just, if there were spray painted paint, how?
You
would
got a
that-
sustainability statement in my proposal, there are people you can call.
Okay.
And what you will do is you will send them pictures and say, look at this. And they'll say, oh, that looks like an oil-based, whatever, whatever. And they'll give you either a solution, or if you want to pay them, they'll come up here and do it. If there's a foundry local, I don't know if there's any bronze casting houses in
Vermont, there are,
Vermont's the closest. Okay, so nothing in Massachusetts.
oh yeah, Eastern Mass,
Okay, but the point of it is that this is a 2.5 hour drive.
yeah.
It's not a big deal. I mean, it's not like you're in California. The folks who cast it will come and fix it for you. Again, if it's something that they think that you can do, they'll give you instructions like, okay, here's what you do. Use 1 part this, 2 parts that, try that, call me back.
Mhm.
If you say, ooh, it did work, it's like, okay, they may have to come. It's a conversation. It depends on exactly what happens.
In your experience, how often do public works like this get paid?
Oh, Mark, it's based all the time. It doesn't have to be black. It's not even a matter of the fact that it's about a black person.
Right, it's just that
People
do stupid stuff. Right.
Listen, somebody
You almost
videotaped
have
a
to
child
go
flying all over one of my sculptures down there. It was like, I said, are the parents around? I mean, people do what they do. I mean,
So you almost
that's,
have to expect at some point.
I'm telling you, we're all gonna hug and kiss it on day 1, and then we're gonna see what happens. Okay? That's how it works, I'm telling you. Seriously, I've got example, here's one,
That's good.
Yeah.
Roosevelt. Teddy is in a high school. He's gone on a pince nez with a chain. We gotta replace that chain every year. Seriously, the kids know evidently that the chain can come off, and when nobody's looking, they steal the chain. So I sent them a ream of chain after the first year. I was like, here, I'm just gonna buy a ream and send you, and you have your guy cut it off and put it on. If you get tired of doing it, whatever, it's up to you. It's your piece, however you feel about it. You don't have to seriously wrestle that because the pince nez is attached to the face. But the point of it is that same thing with Ella's earrings. See those earrings? Somebody wrestled the other one off like in year 1, like, stop it. So again,
What are you gonna do with a brass earring, a bronze earring this big?
people do what they do. That's all I can say. People do what they do. There's no accounting for these things. So when we had it restored, I was like, I want an earring put back, thank you very much. So they restored it completely. And again, restoration from scratch was a 3-day adventure. Patina, you ever see patina? Oh my God. I don't know how you have that kind of patience. The first time I saw patina done was probably 2008 with Frederick Douglass. I watched this woman patina the foot for an hour and a half. And I was like, so when do you think you're gonna be finished? She's like, probably by Wednesday. I said, I'll be back on Wednesday. Because I'm just saying, like, it's like spray, hit it with a fire, spray. I mean, it was a very time consuming. I mean, when you're talking about bronze, it's not the metal, it's not this 14-karat gold or something like that. It's that it's time consuming, the whole thing from start to finish.
And you say it was 25 years from,
Yeah, they didn't do anything for 25 years. She turned this beautiful blue-green color and uniformly, as I said, it was very nice. I would look at her regularly. People come to visit me. Oh, let's go across the street. Like, okay, come on, let's go. And for the most part, she was aging what I call normally. People up until that point have been loving her. I mean, when I lived in Maryland, people call me like, they put a red scarf on her for Christmas and a pink scarf on her for Valentine's Day, and it's the same scarf every year, so it's the same person every year. If you ever come to Yonkers on the week of her birthday, there are flowers, dead ones, in her hand. People leave pennies all over. I mean, this means
connection.
speaking to people, some kind of how.
No, I was gonna say, that's a Yonkers train station, not the Great Barrington Library. We're not gonna have as much foot traffic.
I mean, you know, it's interesting, as I said, as an artist, it's really interesting to hear other people talk about how your work makes them feel. But it's really all about feeling. When you look at it, you like it, you don't like it. You like it, you don't like it. You know, then the question is, what does it mean? And again, the idea is an artwork should have a voice. Artists cannot stand there. Okay, here's an example. I'm just gonna say it. Martin Luther King in Boston. On day one, the Washington Post wrote a scathing editorial talking about how Black Twitter didn't like it. But here's the thing, as time went on, the artist and whomever else kept trying to explain and defend and explain. And it's like, no, that you shouldn't have to do that with public art. Public art should explain itself, should speak for itself. And that's the whole purpose of it being there, is that it says something about the values of the community. And it's not about what I'm saying, it's about the value of the community, the fact that you even bother to pay for it to be there. So this is his hometown. And you say, I'm sure you're all very proud of that now. But the point of it is that when you ask someone, you ever heard of W.E.B? People are like, yeah. It's like, what do you do? He was the founder of the NAACP. It's like, and what else?
Yeah.
That's how people respond when they ask that. So in this instance, for me, it's not enough just to have him. There should be more to it. Yeah, there should be something to it. And again, people who come to the library, these are people who love books. These are people who love reading. You know, these are people who are sparked by it and where they want to know more stuff. And so you give them something to think about. Any other questions?
There might be someone from Zoom looking for an answer. All right, do that.
Hi, oh, look, somebody's
Oh,
talking
there, all right.
in the chat. Thank you, had harder than me. Oh, okay. Yeah. At any rate,
I see your Montana. Your fit here.
they want to see it? Oh, you want to see it?
Yes, please.
And now, so this is what you're saying, is you have the next size up one that we need to create,
Mhm.
right? Because this
Yeah,
one
because
is.
originally I thought we were doing full size. I'm like, got the cheating. So now the question is, can I make it that scale? Which
Yes, that's exactly the scale you should make it.
Yeah, sure.
These are all gonna go on display in the
Yes.
library. And I
Okay,
think
that's very helpful. Okay, so this looks like 8 to 10 inches.
Yeah, everybody did something a little bit different
Mhm.
from whatever it was.
Yeah,
that-
because 24 inches was a lot of work and expensive.
Mhm.
That's helpful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we had no idea who was gonna do what,
Mhm.
so.
So again, I
Bench
want to
is
be
the one that is actually.
the bench.
The bench.
Well, that's again, Gregory jump starting the decision. The-
Well, no,
the
we
actual-
decided we were sending that, but these guys did something different with it.
I don't know why. At
Yeah,
any
We
rate,
need the bench, so.
yeah.
did they receive the bench? Because I received the bench like,
Yeah,
it took
I
me
think
like
that they
3
did.
weeks to get the
I
bunch.
think they each did, but I don't,
They didn't use
I didn't think to ask while they were here about how they came up with their bench design, because this was the bench.
Right, so I have the one that
Gregory said.
Rory sent me. What I will do is ask them to, well, I already have the skin, because we had to scan it while we were waiting, because we needed to know how they sat on this. So I'll just have it done tomorrow, it's not a problem.
We're going to start displaying these on the 19th.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
So-
told them.
Yeah, so
Okay.
between now and the 19th is.
So I am working with somebody else now, and, 22 is littered with dead zones. Can't have a phone conversation on it.
No, you cannot.
So, and so when I get back to civilization, I'll call them and say, oh, we're down to 10, what about that? And see, how that works, if that helps them with time, because the big ones literally take 5 to 6 days to output. I didn't know that. I mean, we were early and I'm thinking, oh, this is good. So then when the first one messed up, I was like, oh, no problem. We got another week or so. And of course, when the second one is just like, I'm not saying anything. Let me just keep going. And anyway,
I
so,
do have one question about, because we never talked about position with that. We just said, we want them sitting on a bench so people can sit. And the bench that would be.
so he's
the
leaning,
left-hand side.
yeah, leaning this, but he's, okay, so this is you coming in. He's sitting on an angle.
But actually, what the bench is gonna be like
I
that,
understand, it's a
the
demi.
stairs, and then.
But there's more to this.
Correct,
There's more to this.
yes.
So I have him
No,
sitting,
this ends as a straight and there are stairs like this, and then the other side is a mirror image of that. It's longer than,
this is what I'm saying, that this piece is long.
Longer,
right, but if he's sitting there, he's sitting away from anyone who wants to sit next to him. So would he be closer to that and
No.
closer to the stairs so that someone can come on this side?
No, I want him closer to the end because the end is closer to the street. What I'm thinking in my mind.
Yeah, not really.
Well, it's
While
gonna
you're
be over
here,
Yeah,
let's go over to the library so you can see what that actually looks like.
okay, so as I recall, there's a walkway.
Correct.
Behind
Yeah.
here.
Yes,
There's
that's true.
upstairs, whatever. As I recall, this is just a fraction of the demi-lunar.
correct.
Yeah,
I'm saying to you, when we were here, we talked about him sitting at this end of the bench. He didn't say anyone.
I don't
care what
think-
he would.
I don't think we actually talked about it at all, but
Well,
I'm just
certainly
looking
not-
at this and thinking,
Yeah.
maybe it should be closer to, so you look
So
at it.
in my mind, I'm thinking the first approach. I'm thinking you get out your car. The front door is there, he's over there. I'm thinking, ooh.
Yeah.
Wow, that's W.E.B. In my mind, I'm thinking I'm gonna leave enough room for one person to sit here and we're all sit on this end.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking.
That's all I'm thinking is as long as there's enough.
They can
room
sit
for
on
someone
either
to
side.
sit.
And again, we'll measure, it's like, we'll make room for somebody with a wide bottom, like Martin, where it's like, you have room to sit next to him. I'm just simply saying that the goal was to have him not sitting this way,
There isn't.
but sitting more that way, so that as people approach him, he is
Yeah.
looking in their direction.
Okay.
That's what I was supposed to do.
Yeah, my only concern was that it was maybe too close to the end, but you said.
Yeah, no, it's goal to be able to have two people.
Okay.
Well, one person to be able to sit on either side of him, depending on how big it's, so it's not really way down there.
Okay.
So.
That was all, that was my question.
Displays that.
Behind that. Sure, yeah. 'Cause I'm
No
just-
questions?
Vinnie,
Yes.
can you give us an understanding on how you positioned your body and what kind of language
But
you're trying to express
this is where the bin is going to be.
with that posture? What-
So with this posture, it is as
But
if,
they're using
you
this
see how he's
because
sitting?
it's broken.
It's as if he's sitting there.
I know
Again,
people would have to
he's
say,
dressed.
I wanna go do this. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, they're not gonna triple.
Vinnie, thank you so much.
It's this, it's this.
Oh,
I'm sitting there. I'm reading something and my hand under here is basically supporting this arm because I'm holding something up to read it.
But he's
And
contemplating.
he's looking at the person approaching him as in he's not engaging the paper. He's engaging the person who's approaching him.
Right, he looks up from the page.
Right, so it's like, I'm reading this and here you come. The next thing would be like, hey, how you doing? So it's I'm reading, I'm just sitting here out in front of the library. I'm sitting here thinking about my stuff, whatever I'm thinking about doing, it's my first issue, I'm reviewing this and, oh, hi. That's the moment.
So is he inviting conversation? Is that what this is?
I think that the fact that he's not reading and totally immersed in his world is inviting.
Yes.
Again, everyone will have their interpretation, but I don't think that it's closed.
Whereas
And also
from
too,
this perspective is,
mhm,
he's engaging that person
Yeah.
and
Yes.
maybe even explaining what's in the book.
it could be,
That's what I
It
mean,
could
that's his
be.
posture.
you know, I mean, again, everybody will tell their own story. Like each person will come to their own idea of what they think this moment is. And so again, the idea is that, you know, he is, originally I was gonna have him be older,
Maybe trouble.
but the problem with older is that he's not as recognizable older. Most people know him from the younger picture, so I had to take him back a bit in terms of his visage. And again, it's just one of those things where, you know, like anybody else who might attend the library, and I'm reading. I'm just sitting here chilling, reading, and here you come.
Is
And
that,
I'm like, hi, how are you? That's the kind of moment that it is.
I like that.
And that's it.
Well, and also the way that he's sitting, he's not against the back, so you can see what's going on here.
Yes, so even if you're walking by and ignoring him, let's just say you don't care about art, when you're walking by and ignoring, you're like, well, wait a minute, what is that one? Anyway, okay, so it may still draw someone's attention who might not normally care, but I see that it's W.E.B. voice, so what? You know, but then it might be like, wait a minute, hold on, what's on the back? So again, the goal is to not just catch the eye, but hold the eye, make them, oh, why? So again, if you can get them to look at the back, it might make them be like, wait a minute. You know, again, these are the things that go through my mind when I'm trying to figure out how to draw attention. And again, it's the details that make the difference. You know, and again, I can tell by the way that people talk to me about what when I do, they say things like, put the shoes. I mean, yeah. I'm just saying, these are the little things that make people, look, even when they look at you, it's like, what is she? Interesting. Now, yours are interesting to have color, but even if they didn't have color, it's like, you're still interesting. Again, those are the shoes that you wear, they're classic view. I'm just simply saying that in the process of researching him, I had a conversation with my men friends, like, well, do you think spectators are okay? Yes, put spectators on them. Okay, that's what I'm doing. Okay, the ones with the little holes, and you could, like, oh, you know, so again, for people who care about fashion details. And again, we had a long conversation with me and my girlfriend about men and swag. But like, what makes a man have swag? I'm like, posture, draping, there are all these things that are very subtle and subliminal that make people look at you like, that's, I'm just saying, this is what we're going for. And again, so a lot of it has details, like, so for instance, I remember trying to teach men how to tie bow ties, like, you look like a bow tie guy, you're like, what's like, and you're like, do you know how to tie a bow tie? You're like, no, it's like, let me teach you how to tie a bow tie, it's really easy, like, I should, it really is, to get to a bow tie tying session. And again, you know, women like bow ties, just so you know, the point of it is that if you're gonna wear a bow tie, wear a hand tie bow tie. Do not wear the flip phones ever. Okay, these little things that matter. Okay, and then again, you know, little things like, for instance, the way that he liked to wear his beard and his mustache. Oh, this is him expressing himself. You could tell by the way he looked that he had a certain regard for himself by the way he just did his little details and things like that. All those things make him him. I want to have a QR code.
well, I actually, because I had a question about the facial expression, because I can't really tell from
You wanna try it?
your method.
Get your phone and try it.
Can you talk about because you're saying kind of like a looking up and inviting, and did that inform the expression on his face?
He was basically, the face is basically relaxed. Again, I didn't try to do anything with the expression. Because most of the images of him are him just looking very kind of matter of fact.
There he is on the wall. I believe.
Right, I mean, but to answer her question from earlier, I think that informs a lot about the welcoming, regardless of your posture, it's like, maybe it looks like. Maybe it looks stern.
They were yellow, yeah.
I got it right.
And then with.
Do you have it?
Yeah, I have it. I love it.
Yeah.
You gotta
And then you can scan it. And it's really beautiful. I love QR codes. And you can turn him. Oh my God.
It was cool. I thought it was cool. We were trying to figure out how to make it work this morning. We did that for you this morning. It was like, oh my God, what can we do? It's like, oh, here we go, just something. Okay, and so just about everybody has a cell phone, a smartphone, no other 11-year-old. And so it allows you to just kind of virtually walk around him. If you choose him, or when you choose him, you can put that on your website and have people be able
We
to.
will actually put up a QR code next to the statue or
Mhm.
somewhere so that people can actually read the history of it.
Right, so I'm just gonna be saying that that was a very nice save. Again, because that happened. Okay, anything else I can tell you while I'm here?
We're great. I think this was terrific.
Thank you.
What?
I shall return.
One brief question.
Yes.
With the specificity of the writing,
Mhm.
how do you think the younger people would relate to that? Do you think it might be a barrier, someone who doesn't read it, because we do want it to be accessible to, different types?
I think it's gonna be a personal choice.
Mhm.
When you, for instance, the first cover is not my favorite cover.
Mhm.
There's a whole bunch of cover I like from a sculpting standpoint. But I thought it was important to start with the first one. Because the first one was an example of his vision.
Mhm.
And again, what's on the back actually isn't the back, because the back is unremarkable.
Mhm.
But what's on the back is actually from inside you. And when we went through each page, because we were the whole team, and they were all sitting trying to know what to do. We came up with this one because it says what to read, which, it's like, okay. If you're that curious, you can do a variety of things. You can take a piece of paper and you can do a little stencil thing, so you can really read it. You can find out, is there a key code? Oh, look, there's a key right here. Let's see if it's on the list. And then the next question is, does the library even have any of these books? And if they don't, where can I get them? Like, for instance, I'm on Facebook. If you post a bunch of books, I'm going to eBay. I bought a bunch of books in the middle of the night on eBay because somebody posted a book that I was like, oh, I want that. So it depends on I'm just considered the initiative, the intent of the viewer, and every viewer is going to be different. Young viewers, it depends on what their mission is. If it's an artistic child, that's one thing. If it's a child who's on assignment and, oh yeah, I'm doing him, that's a different thing. If it's just a child passerby or a youth passerby, you never know what snatches a young person's attention. Again, it could be the sculpture itself. It could be, well, what is he reading? What is that? What does that say? Everybody is literally different. And the things that motivate them is like this. Again, somebody will walk right by that and not pay it any mind whatsoever. Be like, I don't even see that. Somebody else might be, wait, you go ahead, I'm gonna look. It depends. It depends on how it strikes the individual. And again, every single body is a little different. So you can't make up an artwork that covers everything for everybody. So, if someone says, what was the artist's intent? It's like the artist took the opportunity to illuminate 16 people in one fell swoop. That's what this is. Because again, oftentimes when I am doing public art, particularly about Black people, real Black people in history, I'm always curious to see, like, well, who are their contemporaries? Who do they work with? Like, for instance, when I first had to do, I think it was Sojourner Truth. Sojourner Truth was a nurse. Well, so was Harriet Tubman. It's like, wait a minute, Harriet Tubman was a nurse? It's like, she was. It's like, oh, and so as you learn each of them stories, then it's like, oh yeah, and by the way, Harriet met Frederick in, 1855 at the such and such convention in Philadelphia. It's like, what? So as time goes on and you learn more about each of these individual stories, you begin to learn how they touch each other. That part is really fascinating to me now. So for instance, like most people, I did not know that Langston Hughes published in the Crises first ever. I didn't know that. I mean, I've got my son used books at home. I love his stuff. But I didn't really ever have to study him. I don't really know him. They didn't teach him in grade school, high school, or college. So I know what I know until I have to know more. So when I go to try to win something like this, the question is, what's the most important thing to say? And for me, that's kind of how I go at public art. You know, again, I have an opportunity to illuminate a whole bunch of black people. It's like I'm doing that, particularly when they are people of some renown. These are major people in the Harlem Renaissance, and they don't have sculptures of their own. And they may not ever get sculptures of their own. And so, for instance, right now I'm doing the Reverend James Lawson. When I say the Reverend James Lawson, like, do you know who this is? A lot of people like, it's like, the Reverend James Lawson is the architect of the civil rights movement. It wasn't Martin Luther King. This is the guy behind him who orchestrated all of the marches. The March on Washington, the Freedom Rides. Nice meeting you. Everybody. And again, when you see his picture, you're like, oh wait, I've seen that guy before, but you don't know who he is and you don't care until now you need to know who he is. The point of it is on his back, there's 30 people from the civil rights movement. They called me up 2 weeks ago to say, we're going to give you another 6 months because we just decided that we need to renovate the library because you scared us, because now we realize we got to make it real nice because you said we should invite all the families for all 30 of these people. So that means the Kings, the Abernathy's, the Georges. We're not ready for that kind of attention. Seriously, they decided they're going to renovate the library because of the sculpture. Because now I said to them, do you understand what you're doing? A lot of these people will never have their own sculpture. You should invite them to the unveiling as a courtesy, let their family come as a courtesy, because this might be the only opportunity that their family ever gets to have their loved one acknowledged. And when they thought about it, they were like, oh, we didn't realize, yeah, what you were doing. It's like, no, it's a big deal. So now they're feeling the Kool-Aid and, you know, in the library. But the point of it is that because people don't know James Lawson as a rule, I mean, they really just don't know him. I thought it was important to put it in the context of what he did. He was the guy that made the civil rights movement protests possible. This is the guy who was in India studying with Gandhi, not Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was not in India with Gandhi. He was not. And again, a lot of people got it twisted because, well, they say what they say. And it's like, no, 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 there's the truth. And this is about the truth. And so, that's my presentation. Thank you.